Welcome everyone today on this session on the Database Management Service. This is Steve Lemmy, Senior Principal Product Manager here at Oracle, and I'm joined by my coworker, Sriram Vrenda, Product Manager at Oracle for the Database Management Service. We're going to go ahead and talk about what the service is used for and dive a little bit more deeply into the service to get you familiar with it, and then also provide you some resources at the end. So let's go ahead and take a look at our agenda. So in this session, we'll touch upon the challenges that customers are currently having today with their database management activities. We'll then look at some key use cases and Oracle solutions. And then at the end, we'll make sure and leave you some resources so you can take the next steps with the database management service. So let's go ahead and get started. It's obvious today that customers have more than databases on-premise. They have databases in the cloud. They have databases on-premise and the cloud. They have databases scattered across different clouds. And so most enterprises today have mixed IT managing those environments. In fact, most enterprises are using multi-cloud computing, which is a broader set of hybrid cloud computing. No matter where your databases are, they need to be appropriately managed. And so we're going to talk about how to do that today. Now, as databases are being scattered around increasingly, it's creating other challenges within the business. The applications no longer reside in one place, for instance, on-premise. They may now be cloud native. There's more applications than ever before, and many different configurations and many different databases and tools trying to keep up with those databases. And this really prolongs the time and work to even diagnose issues, let alone perform the standard maintenance and administration activities. And obviously, other roles and other organizations need to be performing activities with databases, and you certainly want to be using the same tools and data when doing that. Otherwise, you end up with cloud silos or cloud sprawl. And in fact, Sriram, which would you prefer to use? All these different tools and consoles for each and every different database or technology? Or one place to view?
I would prefer a one-place thing.
Especially as the data would be different between all those other different consoles. And those consoles all might be used by different people. So they would have different viewpoints, wouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So you have, as you said, we have databases on premises. We have databases in the cloud, even in other clouds, and even autonomous databases. So I would certainly like to have a single place where I have a single view of all these systems that I manage, right?
So the Oracle Database Management Cloud Service was developed and designed for these purposes to help customers get a view of all their databases in one place, no matter where those databases are. They can be on-premise, they can be in a cloud, they can be in a private cloud, they can be in other cloud, but being able to get insight, health, and perform activities like administration all together versus independently. Have the capability to get specific key performance indicators and assess the health, and then be able to take action once the problem is determined. And of course, you can do that for an individual database, but in an automated fashion when you have many databases. And Sriram, I don't think I've spoken to a customer recently that just runs one database. At least they have production, dev, and test, and in many cases, a DBA themselves may be managing 30 databases alone. And so there's a variety of benefits that the service further delivers to our customers. One of those is role-based information. So you don't have to be a DBA to use the service. Other lines of business type of users, administrators, DevOps can utilize the service independently and be performing activities on the databases. And rest assured, the functions they're performing are part of the overall observability and management platform. So it's not happening in silos, which is very important for maintaining the configuration and keeping the databases available. Also, a lot of customers today have struggled, as we mentioned earlier before, because those databases were using siloed or older technology tools, and the database management service, being a managed service, takes advantage of the latest technologies and functionalities. And it provides a variety of features that deliver capabilities that aren't usually available. You don't have to, install or manage things on site. You can log in and start using them. Sriram, you're going to go over some key use cases based upon those points we were just talking about.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. We're going to talk about Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Database Management Service. We have a good foundation now. Steve has been talking about why do we need this. The first thing that comes to my mind is the single pane of glass view for databases deployed anywhere. And that's the key thing we kind of discussed, and we had a discussion around that. Why do we need that? Because we have databases that are deployed on premises, which are deployed in the cloud, which are deployed in a multi-cloud scenario, which we certainly call as the hybrid cloud. And hence we need a tool that allows us to view a single pane of glass view of databases deployed across the enterprise. Now, what is this tool? This is the enterprise manager capabilities you've been enjoying on premises, but now it has the capability in Oracle Cloud on an on-demand subscription-based cloud model, wherein you get all the combined backend instrumentation along with the visualization-driven interfaces that is now made available within Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. What this means is that it is a cloud-native tool, fully managed by Oracle in terms of upgrades and patching. So you don't need to actually take care of the patches or upgrades of the management tool that you are using to manage your databases. It's truly elastic in the sense that you don't end up paying operations. You don't end up deploying personnel to manage the management interface or the management tool. It also can be used to connect to databases which are 11.2.04 and above, including standard edition databases. So the key use cases here, we can monitor and administer databases. You can do real-time performance diagnostics and administration, and manage databases deployed on multi-cloud or on-premises. Let's try to understand what we mean by manage Oracle database deployed anywhere. You would have databases that are deployed on-premises, be it on an on-premises commodity hardware or on Exadata, or you could also have the clouded customer deployment, which is the Exadata clouded customer. You can have databases that are deployed in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, virtual machines, bare metal or Exadata cloud service, or even autonomous databases. You might also have Oracle databases deployed in authorized clouds like AWS or Azure. This single tool allows you to do manageability of all these databases from a single console. It is simple and easy to use, and it's a fully managed cloud service, which gives you a fleet-wide administration for greater operational efficiency and excellence. You can quickly troubleshoot performance issues, optimize SQL with real-time SQL monitoring, and optimize database performance by using a variety of other metrics and tools and features available as part of this particular service. From a database administration perspective, you can schedule SQL jobs on a regular fashion, manage database parameters, manage table spaces. And we have a lot of other features that are lined up. And since this being a cloud service, you no longer need to wait for us to release new features, and the release cycles are on a monthly cadence.
And as this is managing Oracle databases, the database team themselves also have their new release and functionality cycles as well, correct, Sriram?
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. So we will actually manage them because we are part of the same ecosystem. So we will automatically get those updates, and we don't need to actually, think about, do I get support for a particular version of Oracle database or not? All right. To elaborate on these features, we'll go over them one by one. We have bucketed them into multiple categories. Monitor and manage databases. This is where we talk about the unified view for monitoring and managing Oracle databases, which are deployed on premises and cloud. From a performance diagnostics perspective, it is very important that we need to have an integrated view of a single database activity from a performance perspective. The reason being, I have a fleet of databases and I identify that there is a problematic database that needs to be dealt with immediately. The fleet tells me, looking at the load, by the way, we found a problem with your sales database. Now I need to drill down into my sales database, and using tools like Ash Analytics, SQL, or session details, I can do analysis on blocking sessions, explore metrics using the AWR Explorer feature, and also do advanced execution plan analysis for monitoring and optimization. And these set of features, as Steve mentioned, is tightly integrated with the Oracle database kernel itself. And anything that you get within the Oracle database is made available automatically over here. And that's something that differentiates the service from any other service that is available outside in the market. From a database administration perspective, we have capabilities for table space management, parameter configuration, user management, backup, etc., which is in the roadmap, and a lot of many features are there as well.
And Sriram, for those not as familiar with active session history, could you kind of summarize the active session history analytics capability for those who have really never been exposed to Ash before?
Absolutely. Active session history is something wherein we sample a lot of data which is there in the Oracle database memory. So what happens is, like, if I have a lot of database activity happening, I need to know which are my top sessions, which are my top SQLs. We kind of go over and sample those session details, SQL details, and then get them persisted onto the database itself. You have a memory component and a disk component. You sample the data in the memory. 1 out of 10 samples are actually written down to the disk. So you get a fine-grained data of what is being sampled for the last 1 hour. And anything beyond that is written back to the disk and goes to the automatic workload repository. And you can go back in time and see what happened within the database. Any other tools that you use will not have this capability of auto sampling, going back to history and maintain the historical information. Although all of them are kind of lost. And this happens natively within the Oracle database itself, without having to install any new agent, without having to install any other exploration tool that you would otherwise go and talk to the database.
Great. So customers today may still be using something like StatsPack. This gets them deeper and more detail than they have today, it sounds like.
Absolutely, yes. So StatsPack does not cover the active session history kind of model. It used to be the model that was adopted in Oracle 9i days. It is no longer a recommended tool. It is kind of outdated. New generation performance analysis tool, or the methodology, is the DB time-based model, which uses the Ash Analytics or the active session history method.
Great. Thank you for that extra detail on Ash Analytics.
All right, so let's go one by one. Let's look at monitoring and management from a fleet perspective. Most of the customers would have a network operations center. And the request is, we need a unified NOC style or a network operations center style view of the entire database fleet. In this case, this tool provides you that same capability out of the box for Oracle databases that are deployed either in the cloud or on premises. And all these data that you would see in the form of metrics or telemetry are useful for DevOps or maybe an L1 support personnel who would like to monitor them and then also try to triage any kind of specific issues related to application monitoring or maybe an application deployment process. And this also leads to the fact that you get fleet style management. As part of your DevOps process, you might have to execute SQL jobs to get to a new release, to patch an application. So the SQL job execution engine that this service provides will give you fleet level exposure wherein you can execute the SQL job across a fleet of databases. Like Steve was talking about, you might have systems that are development, that are in test, maybe UAT, and all of them needs to be passed to a certain application version. And the methodology is to use the DevOps process or the CI/CD process to execute them via a SQL job or a PL SQL execution. And it has to happen across all these databases. And that's where the SQL job execution comes very important. From a database groups perspective, you can enable cross-compartment fleets. So fleet is nothing but a group of databases. You might want to group them together based on your business requirements. You might group databases that are from a sales department into a sales compartment, from an HR department into an HR compartment, but you might be a DBA or a senior architect who would want to have a bird's eye view of what's happening across my fleet. And the database groups essentially allows you to group databases across compartments and give you at a very high level what's happening within my fleet, and then take remedial actions or talk to the respective department DBAs and tell them, by the way, we spotted a problem in your department. You want to go ahead and do further triage and analysis and maybe get a report back from them. All right. Let's talk about Performance Hub now. So the fleet-wide view is more of a DevOps use case, and we would actually need to go to the database specific details if we were to triage a particular database problem. The fleet would tell you, from a fleet of databases, I identify that there is a problematic database. Let's assume that this problematic database is from your sales organization, and it's a sales database, which is pertaining to your sales orders. I see a problem from a weight perspective wherein I am IO bound. Now I need to know, like, are there SQLs that are impacted because of this IO related issue? That's where Performance Hub comes into picture, which gives you features like Ash Analytics. We spoke about Ash Analytics earlier, and also uses capabilities like real-time SQL monitoring, when you can go to the details of a particular SQL. Let's say I have an IO bound system. Looking at Ash Analytics, I can apply filters, which allows me to filter down by a particular problem, which is IO. And then using that filter, I can nail down to the SQL that is impacted by this particular problem. And I can also apply filters and also use tabs to identify if they are blocking any other sessions. This way you have a guided problem resolution approach when you navigate from one finding to the other and kind of tie them all together. Now, if you are not an expert DBA, and if you are a DevOps personnel, and you want to quickly understand what's going on with my database, we also give you features like ADDM. ADDM is for automatic database diagnostic monitoring, which essentially means that if you are not an expert and you don't know how to analyze and filter down by these criteria that I was mentioning earlier, ADDM does all that analysis for you out of the box. You look at ADDM and find out, what is my problem SQL? Am I IO bound? I am IO bound if there is a SQL that is kind of impacted by that particular issue. Are there blocking sessions? Are there issues related to CPU? All that are reported in ADDM, and you being in a DevOps personnel, you can actually take steps to resolve that, or maybe discuss with your senior folks to take any kind of advanced diagnostics in the form of looking at real-time SQL monitoring reports, or maybe sit with your architects and understand more about the database diagnostics from an Ash Analytics perspective. So this allows you to quickly switch between Ash Analytics, ADDM findings, and also SQL monitoring. So quickly you could do both real-time as well as historical mode of analysis, and also get historical view of any kind of SQL reports that you would want to download and use it for offline analysis. Next comes real-time SQL monitoring. So this is an advanced use case. Let's say you are a DevOps personnel, you used Performance Hub, you used your fleet pages, and you have identified at a particular problem. Now you don't know where to go. It's a SQL that I have identified, but I need to know what's happening, what's going on. So real-time SQL monitoring effectively allows you to guide any kind of optimized problem resolution with respect to a long-running SQL. It also gives you interactive visualization. It can analyze current and historical statements, which means that it gives you the data about what's going on with the optimizer right now. Any other tools that are available, even for other databases, you don't have this real-time SQL monitoring. Real-time SQL monitoring allows you to know what is the optimizer trying to do right now. Other tools, other databases would give you a guesswork of what the optimizer might do. And that's where you have differentiation of this tool compared to any other database, any other monitoring tool, because this functionality is embedded within the Oracle database. And it uses the Oracle database kernel to expose these visualization in the form of SQL monitoring reports. You would be able to see if a plan changes on the fly. You might have features like adaptive cursor sharing. You can see at any point in time, suddenly my plan got changed in real time. And that's a database feature. You could clearly spot such kind of scenarios easily using this particular tool. AWR Explorer. This is again for advanced diagnostics, or as an expert DBA, I might want to understand more about the database telemetry. When you look at the performance analysis tools that we discussed, Ash Analytics or ADDM, all of them rely on database telemetry. This is again embedded within the Oracle database itself. Now, you have looked at the AWR report, you have looked at Ash Analytics, you have used Performance Hub, you've used real-time SQL monitoring, you have found a problem, you have fixed it. Now you need to do some root cause analysis and give a report to your management and avoid any kind of problem recurrence in the future. You might also want to compare any kind of workload testing that you've done. Let's say you have upgraded from one version of the database to the other, and you want to do some kind of comparison in terms of, is there any problem, or how was the performance? Did that change, or is it looking the same, or is there anything that I need to address? All those in-depth details, you might want to go little deep dive and understand and specifically tune certain set of knobs. And that's where the AWR Explorer comes into picture. It's an integration of the Oracle performance tools plus additional data visualization across a plethora of telemetry data that are exposed within the Oracle database kernel itself. So you could generate AWR report, Ash report, and Performance Hub report, along with the SQL Health report, so that you can substantiate your findings. But again, this provides various aspects of the Oracle database performance data, which can be very useful in terms of issue detection and also for root cause analysis. No discussion on database monitoring is complete unless we have discussed real application clusters. This tool, Database Management Service, offers first-class rack-aware fleet dashboard. We started off with fleet dashboards, or the single pane of view glass kind of scenarios when you want to actually monitor databases that are in your enterprise fleet. Be it single instance or rack, we have capabilities to support both of them. You can identify databases that are contenting for CPU and memory, and you can actually clearly spot them from your fleet itself. So is it a rack-centric database that is having a problem? If so, can I drill down to the rack database summary page and get any kind of instance-specific data to understand more about which is the instance that is heavily loaded from a DB time or an average active sessions perspective? What is my throughput looking like? Am I choked on bandwidth? How is my memory kind of distributed? And this is important because you might want to correlate that data with your cluster cache activity. You have cache fusion that's happening between two nodes. Oracle has improved all the cache fusion technologies. But regardless, if you have a poorly written application, if you don't deploy your application in a proper sense, you might see a lot of interconnect traffic and rack-related cluster weight events. And you might have to work with your system architects and developers to fine-tune them. But before you get there, you need to have the relevant facts gathered. And that's where the cluster cache activity or the cache coherence comes into picture. You have a full monitoring capability in the form of rack-aware fleet dashboard and the rack-centric database summary page, which allows you to do database monitoring from a rack perspective. From a database administration perspective, you can do basic administration, configure database parameters, manage different databases by database groups. We discussed some of these use cases, like manage or group them by purpose. I want to group sales databases or HR databases together, but I might want to actually see them together as well, because I am the architect who is managing multiple departments. I want to know what are my top 10 databases across all the departments or across the organization or across the fleet. You might have on-prem databases grouped in one compartment, cloud databases in another compartment, hybrid database deployments in another compartment. So across all the enterprise fleet, who are all my top 10 databases from a performance monitoring perspective? That's where the group comes into picture. You can manage database storage, monitor table spaces, data files. Soon we'll introduce the CRUD operations on them. Job automation, we discussed about this, specifically useful for developers and DevOps personals who would want to manage their CI/CD pipeline or release flow using this particular automation tool, or the automation framework allows you to do that. And again, we are working on a lot of new features, like we are working on SQL Tuning Advisor. We are working on the CRUD operations on table spaces, and also the user management operations, wherein I can understand if there are users who are overprivileged, who are underprivileged, and if I'm having an account that is locked or unlocked. When is that I'm having a password expiry and I want to get notified when my password is expired? All these tools, all these features are in the future roadmap, and we'll get to you soon because the release cadence in the cloud is very quick. And that's what we'll discuss quickly about why this tool stands out.
And that's a great point. Why does this service stand out, Sriram? And again, thank you for sharing all those use cases. Those are some great examples. So as Sriram was talking about, there's a full range of features today, and more are constantly being added. And it's something you don't have to manage. It's something that doesn't require extra, packs or options. And there's advanced capabilities within the service that you can use to perform particular use cases, as Sriram was describing. And you have the choice and flexibility of, when to use it and for what purpose. There's a lot of technologies today that you may be using that are no longer meeting your current needs because you are now having databases to manage in the cloud and on premises. So to wrap up today's session, it's really good for us to reiterate this is a managed service to help you with database management in a hybrid type setting. Databases in a public cloud, databases on premise. And it's using the latest technology and Oracle methods and best practices for keeping those databases performing and available. You're getting greater insight because you're managing the databases together. You're reducing cost through the automation and fleet-wide capabilities. And because it's on the observability management platform, machine learning technology is applied. And you don't have to be a data scientist to use it. So we know there's always questions, and we have many customers, partners, and analysts that have validated this technology. And you can certainly explore those at your leisure, but more importantly, we know you want to get started. You want to try the service out for yourself. And so we encourage you after this session to go to the information here and see for yourself how the OCI Database Management Service can help you in your business today. Thank you again, Sriram, and thank you to all those attending today's session.
Thank you very much.